Germany's former Chancellor Angela Merkel has published her memoirs detailing her private life and her 16 years in office. In the book, she rejects criticism of her policy towards Russia and her decision not to allow Ukraine to join NATO. She launched the book at a special event in Berlin.
Freedom is a central principle of Angela Merkel's life. She spent half of it in the unfree society of communist East Germany. In her book, she describes those origins as formative for her political career.
I have always drawn my strength from my life in the GDR. I had no other life. I have exploited the strength that was given to me in those 35 years and used it for my political work.
She describes the resilience and independence which helped her deal with the dominant male personalities she encountered, such as Russian President Vladimir Putin or US President Donald Trump, whose body language was often dismissive. What was the bigger obstacle to becoming Chancellor, being from East Germany or being a woman?
In the end, being a woman.
Many Germans now see Merkel as a chancellor who left the country with some of the problems it now faces. For instance, the 2015 decision to let more than 1 million migrants enter the country. Since then, the far right has surged. Does she have regrets?
I don't blame myself, in the sense that I don't think it was the wrong thing to do at that time, to take in these people who were in Europe, standing at our borders, and to process them according to our legal system.
Merkel's Russia policy is often blamed for paving the way to war in Ukraine. Germany's need for Russian gas, say the critics, blinded her to Putin's aims. Looking back, how does she see it now?
It doesn't make any sense now that I simply say I got everything completely wrong. And now it's like scales falling from my eyes. That's not the case.
700 pages of memories without the attempt to reinterpret the past. Angela Merkel is standing by her decisions as she tells her story of freedom and the responsibilities it placed on her shoulders.
And now let's welcome Ralf Bollmann. He's a journalist with the German broadsheet Frankfurter Allgemeine Sonntagszeitung and the writer of one of the most comprehensive biographies on Angela Merkel. Ralf, you know Angela Merkel well. Did you learn anything new from her book?
No, nothing new concerning any facts, historical facts. But of course, you have an insight how she wanted to be seen by the public. And I think the title Freedom shows what she wants to tell us. The woman who came from the dictatorship, from East German communist regime, up to her position as a German chancellor, the first woman, the first person from Eastern Germany. It's a little bit the story of Barack Obama, who was the first person of color as a president of the United States. And, she, and the title of the book, of course, is a reference to the day when she received the Medal of Freedom in the Rose Garden of the White House by President Obama. And she will present the book next week in Washington, D.C. with Barack Obama.
Now, she stands by most of the decisions she made during her 16 years in power, even though she's heavily criticized for some of them. Had you expected her to be more self-aware?
No, I think she is self-aware, but she thinks that she did right to, for example, with her decisions and the refugee crisis of 2015, or concerning Russia to deny NATO membership to Ukraine and Georgia in 2008 in the NATO summit in Bucharest, and in 2015 the Treaty of Minsk between Russia and Ukraine. And when I say there's nothing new in the book, and I'm not the only person to say this, of course, she said yesterday at the book presentation in Berlin that, if I would have written many, many new things, you would have thought that I was always lying, not saying the truth during my chancellorship, when now I'm writing complete different things. And I think that's not so wrong.
No, we're just...
So she's very authentic. She was always very authentic during her chancellorship. And many people in Germany said, well, there have to be some secrets in her person, in her policies. And I always said, no, there are no secrets. It's quite obvious what she did and what she wanted. And I think, you can see it in the book as well.
Well, no secrets in the book. But what does she say about today's protagonists, people like Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin? She knew all of them quite well.
Well, yes. Unfortunately, there are no secrets she's telling in this about these persons as well. That was a point I was really a little bit disappointed, because nothing new and nothing from her talks with those persons and with international politicians. That is a pity a little bit, I think, but I think she doesn't want to interfere with with nowadays politics. And concerning Russia, it would have seemed too dangerous to her to tell things about this. What I think is interesting is the German election campaign, because when she planned to publish the book in November 2024, she thought it was quite far away from German elections. But now she's in the middle of the election campaign, and she says many things which are not coherent with the positions of her own party. For example, that she says no to nuclear energy, that she wants to leave the debt break in the German constitution and things like that. That is quite difficult for her own conservative party now in this situation.
Ralph Bollman there, journalist and a writer of a biography of Angela Merkel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, DW's chief political editor, Michaela Kufner, has not only read the book cover to cover, she also followed the launch event here in Berlin. So, Michaela, tell us all about it. What is the book like, for starters? Is it a page-turner?
Well, it's an interesting background and explains policy, but if you were expecting her to really come out with the real gossip or some shocking new facts, that really wouldn't meet your expectations. Interestingly, during her book launch, it was scheduled for 90 minutes. It took 2 hours in the end. She gave out some advice towards the end. She actually called for Germany's debt ceiling to be lifted for investments only. I thought that was highly unusual for her to do so. And she called on Europeans to essentially get their act together and decide where they agree on Ukraine. So she did give out some policy advice, something she carefully avoided during more than 700 pages of her memoirs called Freedom.
And what about shedding any light on her more controversial policies while she was Chancellor? You know, like her refugee policy, for example, which was quite controversial.
Yeah, there she actually picked a couple of pages in her book that she read herself about the whole decision. She did stress that she never saw that migrant wave, as it was described. She always saw individuals, and she harshly criticised the Greens, who are also currently now in government, for refusing to declare some Balkan countries as safe countries of origin. She accepts that many people coming to Germany helped the far-right AfD party rise, but she did say one always has to take into account the alternative, and that was something she simply didn't see acceptable, to shut the borders and potentially see people die on the road heading towards Europe, and also in the name of stability, keeping those Balkan countries not under so much pressure for such a long time. So she explains her policies, but you're never going to see her admit making a mistake. She also stands by the Nord Stream pipeline, interestingly enough, while stressing that she would have liked to prevent the situation we are in today, meaning, of course, Russia having attacked Ukraine.
So with this book, we know now a little bit more about how Angela Merkel thinks. But how do you think history will remember Merkel and her legacy?
I do think that this book changes much about how she will be remembered, because in the end she comes to the same conclusion she used to come to when facing criticism during her time in office. She maps out circumstances, but she says she simply never saw an alternative to the actions that she took. And that counts for Russia, where she does accept criticism, but also stands by not letting Ukraine enter the path of joining NATO, something she felt could have led to an even earlier attack by Russia. On migration, we spoke about it. This is something where she felt there was no other avenue. And the same counts for for trying to keep the far-right AfD party. She simply accepts that there are things that are beyond her own control, and her actions, she keeps insisting, were without alternatives, something that will always stand for her chancellorship, just as the Raute symbol.
DW's chief political editor, Michaela Kufner. Thank you so much for that.